All right, we've gone all the way across this beautiful country of ours, gentlemen. We're finally at our final stop in Montreal, where Khari Jones, despite I think doing a very nice job of coaching this team over the last two seasons, is potentially in a position where he is fighting for his job. To talk to people around the league, there's a sense that Danny Machocha, the team's general manager, wants to wear the headset on the sideline, and Khari Jones, right after an early playoff exit last year, having his team lead the league in penalties. There's a sense that if this team does not get off to a hot start, Jones could be in trouble. My question is, can Jones find a way to keep his job in 2022 in La Belle Provence?
I hope he does because I really like Khari Jones as a coach and as a person, but the odds are stacked against him this season. I think the Alouettes are a fine football team. They're better than some of the teams in the West Division. But if you look at the East, and this is a stacked schedule this year where teams are playing more within their division than ever before, I just don't know how the Alouettes are going to be a dominant team facing all the tough competition from Hamilton, Toronto, and Ottawa. There's going to be some early losses. There's going to be a struggle to make the playoffs. And given all the rumors circulating around that building and what Danny Machocha wants to do, it'll be awfully hard for Khari Jones to survive any sort of bottom tier finish, even if that means they cross over to the West or something like that and lose their first playoff game. It's difficult to see Khari Jones keeping his job if this is not, a division winning competitive team.
Let's look at some things here as to why Khari Jones is on the hot seat. All right. Doesn't necessarily have to do with his record because as a head coach, he's gotten the Alouettes into the playoffs 2 years in a row after they missed the postseason for I think was like a franchise record 4, maybe even 5 years. So it really doesn't necessarily have to do with his record or his ability as a head coach. It has to do with politics. Case in point, one of Khari Jones' best friends on the entire planet, Robert Flash Gordon, a guy that he played with, you know this well, in Winnipeg, Hodge. He was, say, forced, but Robert Gordon's no longer on that coaching staff. And those receivers had great seasons, not just good, great seasons in 2021. And Jones is forced to let one of his best friends on the entire planet go. Where do you think that's coming from? Above in Danny Machocha, because he's setting up the pieces for either him to go down and take the headset, as Hodge alluded to, or for himself to bring in his own guy, because we got to remember Machocha was hired after Jones. The other thing that people need to understand is that Khari Jones is tied to Vernon Adams Jr. Danny Machocha is clearly Trevor Harris. That's his type of quarterback. It's closer to what Ricky Ray was when he was in Edmonton. Machocha, I'm talking about with Ray. I'm not saying Trevor Harris is Ricky Ray, but I'm saying in terms of styles and the way they play the game, that's what Machocha likes in his quarterbacks. So those are just a couple of examples as to why Jones is on the hot seat. It has nothing really to do with his record. It's all about politics. Football is a business, and ultimately sometimes it can get a little messy. And that's what Jones is dealing with. And ultimately, the rest of the team also, what Adams Jr. is trying to deal with is having a proven quarterback behind him for the first time since he's been the guy in Montreal. Matthew Schultz was an up-and-comer, but he wasn't a guy that would have worried Adams Jr. because every time he was healthy, Vernon Adams Jr. was going to play. Of course, he had a great 2019 season and got hurt last year, which ended his campaign and ultimately led to the Owls trading for Harrison, what people thought was a rental, but they re-signed him, and he's right there. There are people that think Harris could start early on in the season if Adams Jr. struggles. And I hate saying it, and as much as he was getting after me on Twitter about it, Adams Jr. voicing his frustrations, or should I say tweeting his frustrations, takes you inside his mind. And I don't necessarily know if he's equipped to deal with this situation with Harris behind him. Harris is older, he's more mature in my mind, and he's used to being in these situations. Heck, he was behind Henry Burris in Ottawa and patiently waited and got his chance and took Ottawa to multiple Grey Cups. So I think that situation is one of the more intriguing ones to monitor across the country. And also the dynamic between Machocha and Jones. And Machocha very much has the ear of the president, Mario Cecchini, there, and also the owner of Gary Stern. So he's going to have the ultimate say in what happens with Jones.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at a team where we could see big changes made early, I think Montreal it should be at the top of that list. They're the team that I could see overhauling things sooner than I think anybody else. Right? Edmonton and BC just went through a lot of change. Ottawa obviously just remade that whole team. Montreal, I think, if they don't get off to a good start, is that team. The good news for Montreal is I don't think their schedule is daunting coming out of the gate. It's not easy, but it's not daunting. We'll see how she goes